everyone. I'm super excited today to feature Zach and Valerie. They are, a star couple from last coaching cohort in the fall. They went from, I think last year was a breakthrough year for Valerie and Zach because on many levels, because not only did they get married, they also had a breakthrough financial year as they went from owning zero real estate at that point, joining the fall cohort of the coaching program, becoming proud owners of a short-term rental before the end of 2024 with raving guest reviews. And all of that allowed them to also shelter some of Valerie's clinical income from taxes. And so as all of you are setting your goals and building your massive action plan for this year, I wanted to share with you their story. And we're going to be talking about all the steps that they took to make 2024 their breakthrough year, the tools that they leveraged along the way, and what they wish they'd done differently. I'm super excited to get started.
Welcome to Generational Wealth MD's podcast on financial freedom through investing in real estate. My name is Param Baladandapani. I'm a mom, radiologist, real estate investor, and mentor to others looking to start or scale their real estate portfolios. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with inspiration, strategies, and insight so that you can stop trading your time for money and live life on your terms. If you love the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Valerie, thank you so much for making time. I know you're super busy. And Zach, as always, is like, he's always the person who's 5 minutes early for every coaching call. I remember when we did 10X, you were part of the 10X event first before you joined the program. And even then, you'd be the person who was there, like, I think 10 minutes before everyone else. And so I always had, this warm face staring at me as soon as I logged in. So super excited to have both of you on here. So guys, in your own words, can you share a little bit about your journey last year from, becoming partners in life to becoming partners in real estate, and your journey across? Because I remember when we first spoke, we talked about syndications at one point, and then you really honed into short-term rentals. And so just in your own words, describe your journey of last year.
Well, where do we begin? So I think the story started really in 2023, where I had a career change that brought me from Minnesota all the way to North Carolina. Zach had lived in Minnesota all his life, so he was ready for a new adventure and obviously warmer weather. So it took the career opportunity took a left turn. I decided not to take the opportunity for which I had moved here for, again, because of concerns with burnout and those types of things, and landed it in a different job that I thought was going to be temporary, but I have found to actually enjoy quite a bit, even though it's very demanding. And so all of this kind of played out. And I mean, we've been in a relationship for a long time, almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years.
And I don't know if it was the move here or I guess it kind of solidified us as a family in a way. And we felt that getting married would be the next step. And we were also trying to build a bit more structure in our finances as I'm slowly thinking about retirement and how to set ourselves best for success. And we stumbled upon Generational Wealth MD and decided to kind of just jump in, all in.
And you guys did. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I'm saying I started being a little, maybe a little, I don't want to say skeptical, but a little unsure of this whole process because I've never really done professional coaching or anything like that. And decided, as part of the reason that I'm jumping on the calls and I'm try to be teacher's pet, is Valerie, is like, hey, I want to do this, so I'm going to pay for this, but you need to do the classes because I can't always do it. So it's not only getting doing the class, but it sort of sets up some trust with Valerie that if she comes up with a plan that, we can together put our, kind of put our efforts together and make it happen.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have there's so much to unpack over there. But two things that really stood out for me was what you said, Valerie, about sometimes being in a position as physicians where we're experiencing burnout and we're looking for alternatives. And even when we have a plan, that plan may not work out, but the other thing that's waiting for us may end up being better for where we are in life. And so it's nice to hear those stories because a lot of people are going through challenges and they're going through transitions. And even if it doesn't work out the way you planned it to, it may end up being a lot better. But what I really loved is how both of you show up as a team, right? And so I've coached a lot of couples and everyone's at different stages, but I really really love it when a couple works together really well as a team, and both of you do that, right? And Zach, I think it's also your intention, right? I think both of you are very intentional about really working together and having your own zones of genius. Zach has a little more time on his hands because you're a busy surgeon, Valerie. So he shows up and then you take action together, but you're doing all of this as a team. And like you said, a big part of this, and which is why we call the community generational wealth MD, it's because it's not just about the money financial part, it's also about building those bonds across generations and within the same generation, right, as a family. So that's beautiful. I love it. I know, Zach, when we've spoken in the past, you also mentioned that your father was a real estate attorney, and in the past you had a property that you inherited, and then you then sold. And for me, when I heard that, it was similar to my story because again, I come from a community of people where owning real estate is the norm. And so I feel for us, there's less of a barrier in terms of, okay, real estate can be, a vehicle to wealth building, as opposed to people who haven't seen that in their families. I just don't know if you wanted to touch upon that a little bit, see how to show how that may have maybe influenced your ability to jump into real estate investing at all.
Yeah, a little bit. So my dad was actually a chair of like one of the most prominent real estate firms in Minneapolis. And I kind of remember him a bunch of times saying that he was always a little too conservative with his money, which is why he stayed at the firm and never went private with one of his, I can't really say who he was working with, but with one of the investor groups that he was with. But he'd always talked about how it was such a good force multiplier. And so I had that in my head. And then I also had this little thing in my head is when he passed away of cancer, that he'd actually told one of my friends and was like, I'm going to give Zach like not a lot of money, but a little bit of money. Don't let him start a business with it. Like, just make him save it. Don't like let him go spend it. But I decided that, when we decided to start doing the real estate, that it would somewhat honor his legacy. So it gave me my little, like, we'll say like a little cheat to break the rule about investing. I don't even know if I'd ever told Valerie that part of the story, but yeah. So see, we're still learning stuff about each other. But I had seen sort of how that worked. So I guess it
was somewhat
it was somewhat like that part of it in the sort of the gamesmanship of real estate. I kind of understood that it was could be fun too. Where I think when I was buying my first condo, he helped. And it was pretty funny because he was like, I don't know if I've ever done a deal under $100 million before. And this one was like, $180,000. He was very confused about it, but
Yeah.
and then I had Minneapolis obviously went through some, tough times with the riots and everything. And I managed to sell it like literally at the start of the riots and COVID in 2020, after I bought it right at the absolute worst part of the crash. So I did not really, but pretty well, and then was able to just.
You had bought it in 2008?
Yeah, I bought it in 8 out of foreclosure, but then I was able to take all that money when I sold it because I moved in with Valerie and I didn't need to do anything with it, so I just put it away, and it did grow and it invested it, but now I'm able to pull it back out and put it in a different sort of real estate, which I think has worked really well.
Yeah, and I think you're honoring what he said in that I guess he didn't want you to invest it maybe potentially in a complete business, but I think short-term rentals in a sense are a real estate plus a business, right? So it's a combination that works really well. Tell me something, guys, when you were considering different options, and in the program we go over long-term rentals, midterm rentals, short-term rentals, we've discussed syndication opportunities. What made you guys think about short-term rentals as being the thing that you wanted to hop into? And then maybe we can talk about the steps you took to make sure you were successful in it.
Well, I think our first thought was that, so I'm still very busy clinically. Obviously, we're hoping to grow this aspect of our portfolio so that I can depend less on my income from medicine and have a bit more freedom to choose. And Zach is kind of in, I guess we can call you in a semi-retired position. Yes. And so it felt like this could give something Zach a purpose because short-term rentals are a bit more demanding in terms of time, and Zach had the time to do that. whereas I do not at the moment. As you saw, it was very hard to get me on any of the calls or
Yes.
anything. So it kind of became our project, but with Zach taking the lead, which I and we thought would be a good thing.
Yeah. And the other thing that kind of, we had thought about syndication, and we'll still probably do it at some point once we kind of figure out how to maximize our tax advantage on the first part, which, I'll say it's a little bit of foreshadowing, but for the first year, it's worked very well for us. But sorry, lost my train of thought.
You were talking about syndication.
Oh, yeah. So we were going to do syndications. And then we also, I thought that getting rep status for me would be a good thing. And that in terms of the hour commitment, I still would do it. But I think in order to buy a place that was big enough to justify the rep status in the market that we're at, because I did want to kind of stick into a home market rather than buy out. And so we could invest in our new community and in our state. It just was more than we were kind of comfortable spending initially.
Yeah.
So so then we thought, well, short term, we had a conversation with you. And what I really appreciated is, even though obviously, syndications are an important part of your portfolio, when we said we're not sure if we're ready for them, instead of going, well, maybe this isn't the call for you, you instantly pivoted and said, well, what can we do to help you?
Yeah.
The other thing is my sort of background was motorcycle shops, but if you had Googled me and particular motorcycle brands, it would kind of come up as being the rock star of the industry. But a lot of it was,
customer service.
but it's more customer service and customer relationship, which actually transferred really great. I didn't know that I would, but short-term rentals,
Yes,
I've never done more than ask somebody maybe where a spare towel was or if air conditioner didn't work. And I have had people where I probably talked to them for 3 hours or 4 hours while they're at our place, and it's 4 hours away. So
and I mean, they are initiating.
Yeah.
You're not
yes.
intruding.
And I saw that you sent us a picture of this guest who had left this raving review and drawn pictures and about how beautiful the property was. And the review book had like pages of how she was glowing about over the property, which goes to say that you obviously do really well in the customer service area. Yeah, absolutely. So it makes a lot of
I would say the other thing about it too is our sort of worst thing, and part of the reason why we decided to invest semi-local rather than, we had started looking in Tennessee after the storms came through. And then we decided that, it was important to put our money back into some of the communities that we used to like to visit.
Yeah.
But also that in the worst case, even if it was not super successful and it maybe paid for the interest on the mortgage and that was it would give us a place that we could go to. And when Valerie goes there, it is like you put her in a spa. She is instantly relaxed because, and I think if we were buying it and it just sat empty the entire time we were not using it, we would go there and she would feel stressed because it was a money sink rather than going to this, be this thing we're doing together.
Yeah, absolutely. So many points over there, right? So the STR for you, Zach, is like you are also an entrepreneur at heart. You like customer service. It's serving all those needs. Valerie, you need a vehicle that would get you to that financial freedom, getting those, that safety net outside of medicine in terms of earnings, get to that point faster. And then it also helps with tax sheltering, especially for families where, you have significant income. And yes, that was an easier ask for this year as you're starting out rather than trying to hit the criteria for reps, real estate professional status, which is another thing that couples like you can do where one person is part-time, works part-time or less, because then you're able to tap into those additional tax strategies where sheltering the other spouse's income from taxes. So a lot of reasons why STRs made sense. And I love what you said about the property being local to you, Zach, especially because you like to be hands-on, you like the customer service part. For a lot of people, and with STRs, we always say, if you're trying to buy a short-term rental, it has to be about the numbers. But if you live somewhere where you can make the numbers work, and North Carolina is a, it's a beautiful part of the country for that. I think the further north you go, sometimes there's more seasonality. Like in New Jersey, it's kind of really hard to make the numbers work. But if you live somewhere where you can do that, you get a dual purpose where you can use the property a lot. And if it's something that, will bring you joy and income, then that's the best of both worlds. I want to talk about, more logistics. So people listening can leave with more actionable steps. But let's talk about the tax savings parts, guys. Do you have any idea what the numbers will look like? How much did you acquire the
Yeah.
property for? Let's talk numbers. How much did you acquire it for? How much did you put down? And how much do you potentially think it's going to help in terms of tax savings?
Well, so I think one thing, we were very fortunate that our accountant from Minnesota is still working with us, and he actually is special. Was he connected with your father, I believe,
Yeah.
in some of his work? So his niche is really real estate rather than personal income tax preparation, but he had kept working with us on our personal income tax because of Zach and his father. And so when we came to him asking if he could support us as we're starting to invest in real estate, he was ecstatic because that's really his zone of genius. And he is not taking new customers. But anyways,
He was probably happy to see you guys actually grow because he knows the impact it's going to have.
exactly. So he was already very familiar with everything that we have discussed. I've listened to your podcast a lot, even though I didn't participate in the sessions. But so this was nothing new for him. And so if we talk numbers, I think the down payment for the house was 60,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And when we did our tax planning with him at the end of 2024, we would be getting back that exact amount.
Oh my God, that's amazing. How much did you acquire the property for?
620.
Yes.
620. Okay, perfect. So
620.
you guys did a 10% down loan,
Correct.
second home loan, it sounds like. And that worked perfectly because if it's over 50 miles away from your personal residence, you can still do the 10% down loan. And then this is in a year where you only had 60% bonus depreciation, but you were still able to pull out what you put into the property.
Exactly.
And the biggest thing is, we're getting 60 back, which covers that, but we were not, at the end of every tax year, we both were paying in a significant amount above and beyond what we had pulled out. So I think really the net savings is probably more like 180 this year.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the next couple of years, in some ways, having the bonus depreciation hit right away and then having the slow depreciation on other stuff is going to be good because we're going to be able to hide some other stuff.
Shelter.
Yeah, not hide.
Deduct.
Yeah, appropriately shelter.
Yeah.
Because I think if we look back at the tax planning we have done for 2024, so we're getting this big tax refund. And I think with the combination of us getting married, filing jointly, and the real estate investment, that dropped us down, I think, 2 tax brackets.
Okay.
And so I've been able to convert a significant amount of my IRA into Roth IRA. So there's layers, right? There's a lot of layers, and I really appreciate all the forward thinking of our CPA. It's because I would not know all these things on my own.
So you obviously are working with the right people, first thing, but then also you're very intentional about thinking forward and planning, because already I can hear you guys say, okay, so this year, this is the target. And so you always think of the target and the goal, which is part of the 7-step process, right? And then you work backwards and say, okay, so what do I need to hit those goals? So that's beautiful, guys. I love this. And we talked about the numbers, right? And I want to talk about, and you also used creative financing where you put 10% down. So I want people to hear that because it can seem scary when you think about, okay, do I have 25% down to invest? And oftentimes you don't need it, especially with a short-term rental. And a lot of times with long-term rental. So there are a lot of creative financing strategies there. And you just got started, so we can't really talk revenue numbers just yet because you haven't been through like a peak season.
If you're interested in learning how to invest in long-term and short-term rentals the right way, so you can accelerate to financial independence with the support of mentorship, community, and vetted investor agents in strong markets across the country, then get on the waitlist for the next cohort of Creating Generational Freedom at www.generationalwealthmd.com. You don't have to learn from decades of costly mistakes by yourself. The program is only open for enrollment in the spring and fall each year. In the last 6 months alone, our members have acquired over $60 million of real estate, and more importantly, they're living life and practicing medicine on their terms. You don't have to do it alone.
I want to talk about time spent, and this was a completely furnished property, which was already run as a short-term rental, right, guys? Okay.
Correct.
Excellent. And that's something I think people need to hear, because you don't always have to buy something and then spend all your time trying to decorate it and have allocate a lot of capital to that, because that can be a drain also, because then you need all that capital for furnishing. Like what Valerie and Zach did, a lot of our students do the same thing. They buy something that's furnished. So now and then I'm assuming all of that was rolled into the cost of the property that you acquired, and you were able to do 10% on the entire thing. So now you're using leverage even for that, as opposed to doing 60 for the property and 60K for furnishing, right? So that's a beautiful thing.
And I think honestly, as our first time doing short-term rental, I would have been extremely overwhelmed having to furnish a place. And the property had already very solid reviews on Airbnb. I think it had been an Airbnb for
3 years,
3 to
or so.
4 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was great, because as soon as we acquired it, we were ready to roll. And we have made, a few improvements, upgraded a few little things here and there, but we were just ready to go and wasted no time. And the property, to our surprise, because it's a slow season right now, but started renting like almost immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Beautiful, guys. I want to talk a little bit about material participation, how much time you spent on it, and automations and other tools that really made things easy for you, because it's still 4 hours apart. It's not in the same town, right? And so you need to have those things in place. So for those listening, material participation is typically, for short-term rentals, you need to meet one of 7 criteria. The easiest one that most people end up meeting is 100 hours in that calendar year on the property, and more than anyone else. So let's talk about time and automations, guys. And for spouses, you can meet those criteria combined, right? And so let's talk about how you guys did that, what helped you hit those numbers, and what automations you have in place to make sure that, well, yes, you did it last year, but going forward, how much time do you believe you're going to spend on the property, and how are you setting yourself up for success?
Yeah, and I think, I wind up spending more. When I say more time, I'll say like 99% of the time, 95% of the time of there. So I'm probably a little better to talk, but so we were very lucky to find a cleaner, but very quickly find a cleaner who didn't want another cleaning job. But I think because we had French bulldogs, decided that she liked us. So, because
I'm sure it was your charm, Zach.
Yeah, my total charm. But we were a little worried that initially, because other people in the cohort that own in that area have been having a lot of trouble after the storms, where there's a lot of folks that want, there's a lot of folks that would love to have a job right now.
Yeah.
But there's just not enough people going out, and there's, a lot of folks that just probably don't have the bandwidth to do it. So we got lucky with that. But I was fully ready to do the, 3-hour drive to clean if need be.
So what else?
But thankfully I've only had to go do that once. So we've done a lot of, like website work, I had a lot of phone calls with the bank and the realtors lodge the first year that thankfully I won't have the next.
But I think setting up the automation.
But then also setting up all the Lodgify and Price Labs and all that. And then some of that, I think with one rental, it might not be necessary, but I want to understand how all those systems work. So when we have 6 rentals, I'll already understand the system, and putting them in place will be really easy.
Yeah.
I think, right now I'm spending the most amount of time with guest communication.
But you've done quite a few upgrades, changing the locks, automated.
Yeah, changed the locks for codes, and gone through and using StayFi to capture people's addresses and phone numbers. We haven't really, come up with a plan to do much with that, because I think we're on like our 5th guest or something, right as we're speaking, they're checking out. And then I think a lot of it, it's like even day to day, like if you have your cleaner come through, you need to make sure that you're logging more hours than any particular person. So what I'll do is I'll look, and if I know Jess is going to spend 8 hours cleaning in a week, I make sure to spend an equal amount of time, if not a little bit more, whether it's, posting on social media or, going through and redoing the Airbnb, even if you go through and you redo all the pictures and then the next week you put it right back to how it was, it also, I think, does help you, kind of keep up the rankings. And it's,
I think, there's been other things like upgrading. I think like we had a crib, for example,
Yeah.
that was broken, that was left by the previous owner. So, just upgrading a few things here and there. So I think what's really important is to track the time go rather than kind of do all the things without keeping track. And then if, at the end of the year, you're not really sure what you've done. So,
and then at that point, if you go like, I think I did this and I think I did that, it's probably fine until you get audited.
right.
So I'm in working hours. I know there's a million different apps. I like with that one is that if I have it on my phone and on my laptop and my other phone, it all sort of syncs and dumps into the same pool on iCloud. So I don't have to look at a few different database or anything like that. So I actually spent a good, a while setting that up to work appropriate.
Yeah.
I love, so I want to, unpack a few of those things. So first of all, I know you said it's luck that we found a good cleaner. Luck is 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. So I'm pretty sure, you built relationships and you had conversations and that got you to that point. But boots on the ground for any short-term rental owner is going to be critical. Now, I love how you guys pivoted because you were looking at the Smokies originally, where we have, a whole community working there, people sharing resources, but you wanted to support your local community and then you built those relationships there, which is beautiful. But yes, your boots on the ground, like you said, it's your handyman and your cleaners. They're the ones who are going to really make things so much easier for you. But another thing you said, Zach, which I thought was very interesting, was you said, I'm setting all this up. And you're right, like for the first property, and I tell people this, if you don't have the bandwidth to do this, you have options. Some people just set it up on Airbnb and that's it. And Airbnb has some of its own automations. They aren't the best, but you can take it as slow as you need to. And then within the coaching program, if you get the one-on-one coaching, Dr. Kumar can set it up for people where she'll do all the tech part and then she can walk you through it because I'm not a tech person. So sometimes some people get overwhelmed with it. Zach, obviously, this is his zone of genius. But you said when I'm setting it up for when I have 6 rentals. And so you're already planning, right? So that you want to understand all this for when you're scaling, and all these automations obviously make it so much easier for you to scale because it's the same. Then you can use the same property management software, use the same automations, calendar across all these properties. You're sharing it with your cleaner. So you don't even have to contact them. They know when guests are going in and out. It can be completely automated, and you can stick to what you love, which is communicating with guests, making them feel at home, and all of those things. But I love that you guys are already using StayFi to gather those emails. And again, gathering them right now is more important than really using them. But direct marketing, and you get to the stage where you're already at that point, Zach, where both of you are already done with the initial phase, which is, okay, we're setting this up, we're getting material participation, I'm logging my hours and everyone else who's spending significant amount of time on the property. So I'm audit proofing myself, which I love that you're so detail oriented, because you need that to ensure that, yes, you're getting the tax savings, but you're doing everything right. But I guess the thing is that when you're ready to optimize it further, which it seems like you already are, right? This is what we talk about, where you're boosting your visibility across the platforms. And that's why you talked about, I'm going to shift these images. You do these little things to make sure you're showing up on the first few pages so that you get booked. You're doing all of that. And the next stage is direct marketing. You'll get to that point. And knowing you, Zach, I feel like it's, it's coming. You're going to have your own websites, and Dr. Kumar has sessions about it, but that's all next phase.
I already do.
I knew it.
So it's sort of funny is we kept the same, because we kept the same name
for the property.
Yes.
It
had a name, and it was branded nice, even though we're, by Airbnb rules, you're not allowed to take over a listing. But I figured if somebody went like, what was the name of that place we stayed? They'll still do it. But before we had even closed, while we were still somewhat battling with the previous owners, I had taken all the websites, the .coms, the .nets.
Oh my God, I
all
knew
the
it.
social media, because they didn't own any of that. So I took that and the LLCs and everything in the name. So I'm, kind of ready. Then I was ready. I didn't share this part, that if we wound up not buying it, I could contact the people that did buy it and go sell them all that.
And sell it at a premium. Yes. Okay. So this is, so you're an entrepreneur at heart, it shows, right? And those are the kind of people who really thrive in the short-term rental space. And so, as I know, you're setting yourself up for success, but so I know we're trying to wrap it, but this conversation is going so well. I have a few more questions for you guys. So as you're doing all this, Zach, for people listening, right? What do you think are the key steps? Like if you had to like step back and as an overview, the key steps that you took to make sure that as you're on this journey, you're setting yourself up for success, right? You're leveraging the right support systems. How did the coaching program play into all of this? And what else do you think really, I think you talked about your CPAs and attorneys, and so that's like a big part of it because they're helping you with the planning. But what other big things really helped you ensure that you were doing this right as opposed to learning from your own mistakes?
I mean, a lot of it for me, even though like I said earlier, I had a little bit of hesitance to, join a community and a cohort and everything, is the accountability in the cohort really was helpful. And I think that is, I mean, you've said it a dozen times or more that I've heard, is that you just sometimes need to just buy it, take action, and it'll work itself out. Now, obviously, there's sometimes where you might buy something that doesn't work, but we try not to think about that. And
We lean
but
into
that
the
was
numbers, right?
that
We
was
stress test because I know you guys were stress
yeah,
testing constantly, right? You would post the
Right.
calculators, you were looking at the numbers. Yeah. And
yeah,
And
yes.
I think also we chose a property that, or we found and chose a property that also is a property that we would rent if we were wanting to go on vacation in the area. So because let's say when we were looking in Tennessee,
yeah,
a lot of the properties came with certain amenities that we would never use, and we were not sure that we would really be able to connect or anticipate the needs of someone who enjoys those types of amenities. So the property that we have is a reflection of what we like. And so I think it gives us a chance to also understand the people who would rent it. And I think having it, at least for us, I think what was important was that it was we could drive so that we could be hands-on rather than never stepping in a property. For us, I think because we're detailed oriented, that felt a bit overwhelming to not be able to ourselves on site if something were to happen. So I think those were big items.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about challenges you faced along the way that you think, people should be aware of and how because you did acquire when rates were significantly higher, right? The interest rate environment was different and there was a storm that was, so you acquired and actually made you pivot in terms of where you're acquiring because you wanted to acquire in the Smokies, but then you wanted to support your local community. So what are the other, I know you have great reviews and you thrive in this environment, but what are some of the challenges you think people need to kind of factor in as they're making decisions?
it's hard to tell. And it definitely wasn't luck. It's like we had, enough forethought that we haven't really hit
Yeah.
so far any huge roadblocks. The purchasing of the property and dealing with the people we were buying it from was
It was stressful.
It was very stressful, but
well, here's a challenge that we had actually. So with my job transition, when we initiated the process for financing, I had been in my job for a year minus 2 days or something like that.
Yeah.
And in order to secure the financing, they wanted 365 days. So that became a bit stressful and interesting because you have to, prove income for the last 12 months. And with that transition, the lenders were a little bit concerned just because they have to, check a certain number of boxes. So that, I think one thing to emphasize is make sure that you have been in the same position for 12 months at least to have stability. Thankfully, we were close to that. So it ended up working out, but it didn't delay.
No, it didn't delay because I'd also was very worried. So another offer had come in after ours that I suspect was greater than ours, but they'd already accepted ours. So I didn't want to do anything that would delay it. So the bank work itself is one thing, but the ability to work as a couple and me having to try to dig through Valerie's stuff to answer questions because she's in surgery. So I couldn't figure out what we needed. And some of the stuff it was stuff that I didn't know, but she'd come home and I'd say, okay, we need this, and this for the person that will not be named.
Yes.
And, and then the next day they would say, okay, but we actually need this, and this. And I think we were ready just to give up and then we realized it's just, it's just
a
a challenge.
process. I think
Yeah.
whenever we acquire a property, you kind of quickly forget how painful the lending process is, but it always is stressful. And
Yeah.
but I think aside from that, I mean, and another word about the storm. So Helene affected the area where we purchased our property was around October, and we purchased the property in December of 2024. And so one thing that, again, Zach did that I thought was great. So we had seen on social media that, like, for example, one coffee shop that we really appreciated in the town was really working hard to rebuild. And so Zach reached out to them and asked if we could purchase gift cards from their coffee shop to give as a gift to the people renting our place so that they could go spend money in the community. So little things like this. And so the businesses are also aware of us more,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yes. And then
so-
that's word of mouth over there.
Exactly. And so that coffee shop just opened, like, I think last week,
Yeah,
a week
just
ago
last
or
week
so.
after.
And so now we're going to try to see it how, I think it's just a matter of really supporting our community. And that was really important for us. We also, it's a community with a lot of artists. And so we also want to eventually potentially do small art exhibits that if guests like a certain artwork, they could purchase it, or
Yes.
other ways to support the community that are maybe a bit outside the box.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I've heard of a lot of people do that. So I can see how you guys are already planning ahead and have these ideas. I think the best part is when you said the who shall not be named reading Harry Potter at home now, and all I can think of is Voldemort. But I think the best part is you guys are doing this as a team, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like you got married and then now you have this project and you're building this life. And I think that's a beautiful thing. As we wrap up, guys, anything you wish you had done differently along your journey?
Start sooner.
I know. I think that's what I would say too.
But at the same time, also
we were not ready.
Yeah, we started at the time it was right for us.
Yes.
But I know that you, Param, do a lot of efforts in physician groups to try to put the word out there, and I'm trying to, as I work with younger plastic surgeons, try to let them know that there are creative ways to, set yourself up for success financially. And yeah, I think if I could have, or if we could have started sooner, that would be great. But I know we also started at a good time for us.
Yes, absolutely. Any other advice, guys, to anyone who's looking to start at this point? Because the thing is, I think this is what I hear a lot from physicians. It's like, we're talking about real estate, but I don't hear this a lot in the community. Everyone's investing in stocks and bonds. And so this feels scary. It feels vague and not familiar to most people.
Yeah.
And so there's this huge barrier. So any advice for anyone looking to start?
Well, I would say, I think, within the physician community, I would say short-term rentals are definitely, you have to put in some work. And I think I could see how, let's say, a couple where both are physicians, that could be challenging for sure. But I think in a scenario where, let's say, maybe one is a stay-at-home parent or something, and the kids are a little bit older, that could be a successful scenario. And I know there are options to have a co-host manage your rental, but again, you're cutting off of what revenue you could generate by doing those things. Yeah, so I think people just should know that someone has to put in some time, for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a valid point, right? That is why we discuss different stories of physicians doing it different ways. And it's interesting. Some physician couples can work full time, have their own practices, have 3 kids like Shweta and Kishore, and they run 2 STRs that they self-manage. And it's not everyone's cup of tea. And you have to be intentional about how much time goes in, which is where it's really helpful when you share your stories. But also to remember that year 2, you have some options where you can use a co-host, you can hand it off to a property manager, knowing there's a trade-off over there, right? You're not going to get the same revenue, but you have to be very very intentional and upfront. So I love it. I love it for you guys. I think when you speak to people, you know whether they're going to thrive in this environment or not. I think you both will, because your goals are not just this is for tax savings, so this is for revenue. You're also thinking, how are we supporting the community? How do we have a place where we can go and vacation? And it's something, it would have been similar to buying a vacation home, but now it's also profit generating. So a lot of ways this property is making a lot of sense for both of you. You're thriving in it, and you already have a vision, and you have options. Right now you're weighing all your options. I can do real estate professional status, or we can continue going down and get 6 STRs. And I think for me, I feel like that's probably the route you're going to go down, because I think you'll enjoy that more. And it's also hard when you get those tax savings year one to not see that as like a big incentive moving forward. And hopefully we'll have 100% bonus depreciation come back. We don't know, but even if it doesn't, there are plans and there are ways for us to tap into those tax strategies. Guys, thank you so much. I had a feeling we were going to go above the 20-minute mark, but this was such an exciting conversation. I think you both are an amazing couple. You both bring different strengths to the partnership. It's been so beautiful to see you guys thrive and grow, because I remember when I spoke to you, it was before you got married, and then we had 2 weddings in the cohort last fall, and for me, just to see you guys grow. And I think, like I said, we call the community Generational Wealth MD because it's about building things together as a team, and you're just the perfect example. Thank you guys so much for doing this.
Thank you. We're just getting started.
Yes, exactly. I'd love to see where you guys are a few years from now.
Thank you so much.